Now, Ed, as a relatively smaller or agency that's sort of on the smaller side, how do you sort of account for the need to hire these sort of non, I guess, collector positions and sort of more IT positions? Is it something you would do on a contract basis, or is it something where you just kind of got to bite the bullet and hire the person, for that job?
No, we went to a cloud software based company, and they will handle all the IT aspects of their software. That's not an additional cost that we'll absorb. In order for me to absorb that additional cost, I'd have to bring on a ton more clients and collect a heck of a lot more money. So we made that decision consciously to make sure that the software vendor that we went with is compliant, has great policies, uses the Amazon cloud and their backup systems, but they take on the IT.
Yeah, I think that brings up a great point, and that kind of goes back to that whole total cost of ownership. When each one of us is looking at platforms, we're going to, at the end of the day, say how much money did our agency make and what margins can we invest back into either the company or grow our employment staff. Ideally, I've wanted and I have seen some platforms out there where they're giving forecasting and metrics that will show us comparisons on how much money the agency is making, what our margins are, if it's something we can scale. Any business individual is going to be looking at how they can make the best margins and obviously stay compliant and run the best agency possible. So I really do believe with all this data, it's a good thing if you can feed that back to the decision makers within the business, and they can say, okay, well, if I can scale this by X%, then I can afford a data analyst, or I can afford investment in our IT staff, or hire out or outsource, or bring on a compliance officer. Those are those pieces of information that the smaller businesses can really leverage with a good collection platform or software. Now, obviously, each one of us has to have a good plan on how to implement that, but we have to have that data and information up front. So.
Okay. This is actually as funny as the question I wanted to ask next to the panel, and it's also a question that someone from the audience asked. Managing client expectations in terms of what they're expecting you to be able to do with your software, as well as what they're able to see, what they're able to access, and what you're reporting back to them. What are you seeing, hearing in terms of what the clients are looking for these days, and how does that sort of align with what software, what service providers you're using? Maybe Jonathan, you could take that one first.
Yeah, so our collection agency is 100% healthcare, so I'll be focused on that industry. A couple of the things that we're seeing. So many of our clients require that we have a online portal that they can log into and see the accounts that have been placed with us with real-time status, balance, and what collection activity has taken place: phone calls, letters sent, etc. That one has been a big rub for me. I would say maybe 10% of our clients request it, but it's a huge security risk to have a portal sitting out on the internet that has access to your entire collections database. There's a lot of controls you can put around it, firewalls, all kinds of user access control, all that. But at the end of the day, you've got a portal sitting out on the internet. So that one is something that we've struggled with. But as far as reporting goes too, I think a lot of clients, they want the basics. They want, what's the performance that we're sending to you? Because a lot of times we're being compared to competitors. They're doing Champion Challenger, and they want to see how our performance is compared to that other agency. And that's kind of the table stakes. I think after that, there's a lot of integration. I know at least in healthcare, and I'm sure in other industries, where they want you to be able to remit payments to their bank. They want ACH, EFT automated. They want return reports of accounts that we've deemed uncollectible to send back into their system to go on to a second agency or whatever else they want to do with it at that point. But we're noticing, especially with larger and larger hospitals, that we went from 1 to 2 data integrations and reports to now these hospitals wanting 30 or 40 different integrations between our system and theirs.
Yeah. And we're not solely in healthcare. We have healthcare clients that we're integrating with. I agree with you 100% in what you just said. One of the big companies that I'm sure everybody has seen, Epic Software Systems, is one that we use to measure integrations. Looking at any of our collection software that we integrate, we want to make sure that those software systems are going to play nice. Our clientele are expecting us to remit, not only total amounts collected, but they want to know transactional IDs. They want to know the transactional amounts that are remitted. And back in the day when we used to report this stuff via paper or individual person, there's, like you were saying, so many of these transactions and granular data being reported, it has to be automated. So one of our deciding factors has been, can this software support these integrations seamlessly and give our clients what they want? And I'm starting to see some of the softwares out there adhere to that. I don't think it's a perfect system yet, but we're starting to see some progress, which is nice.
Yeah, I'd like to get back on the topic of the client portal. We have the same concerns with the client portal, the same exact concerns that were brought up. Obviously, we can restrict their access from time of day, IP address, and other factors that we can restrict what they see, what actions they can take on the system, and all that. But what we're looking at, and I was talking to our attorney, putting together a document that gives them that they actually sign and say we will not use this portal for anything other than what is specified for. Meaning also not having any type of recording devices, signing to it, not having any type of recording devices in or around the office when our portal is accessed. Something that's just a safety measure for us.
Yeah, I believe so. Looking through some of these questions, I think security requirements are a big concern for not only the agencies themselves. Obviously, everybody wants to comply and not have some lawsuit on their hands, which is understandable. But we all are looking to make sure that we're giving both our clients access, but making sure we're meeting those security requirements. And I think it's a bit of a tug of war on where that balance is. So I'm sure you guys have had many discussions on what the clients are requesting versus protecting the agency and the clients themselves, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So
it's a delicate balance. It's definitely a delicate balance. You want to give your client what they want. Unfortunately, we all know, some clients can be tougher than others, and when you say no to a client, they're going to start looking elsewhere. So it's definitely a delicate balance.
Yeah, and I hope I don't think software can solve all agency problems, but more and more as things advance and integrate with security requirements, and hopefully these laws are following, there's more that they can do. So when a client goes out and requests that they have a access portal, we want to be able to give it to them, and then we have our concerns. We'll make those cases, but ultimately, I think a collection software should be able to serve up that portal. Be aware of the laws that we're having to face or compliance standards that we're having to face, create things like audit trails, audit reports or audit logs, making sure that they're stored on appropriate servers and having certain compliance standards. And then ultimately it's down to the agency to make sure that they're protecting those interests the best, like doing reviews every once in a while, or having policies on when they're reviewing who has access to what, and making sure there's correct policies on if accounts are inactive or created, or if something isn't looking right, that we have reports back to us saying, here's an alert, here's something you need to look at. So yeah, I don't completely back the whole restricting the client completely out of access to their information, but I agree that there's some issues with once you expose things online, there's possibility for someone to either hack or break into it. So.
Okay, excellent. Moving on, we talked about client expectations. Let's talk about the selection process. So, for whatever set of reasons, the agency's decided to make a change and, look at a new software service. Let's talk about the selection process. How extensive, how comprehensive should it be? How wide do you start? Kind of what are the first few steps to get the ball rolling? And Ryan, maybe you can take that one.
Sure. So I was reading through some of the questions, and one of the questions here asked by Trish was, have the panelists converted to new collection software? I can answer that for us. We are in the middle of making our final decision. So to go back to the question that was asked about how comprehensive, I guess this is going to be an individual answer. How much do you want to scrutinize the software for what you need? I know with us, we spent a little more time looking at it, where I've heard a few other agencies I'm in contact with switch a little bit faster than we have. But for us, we're using things like GetApp Online and other various software comparison tools. And I've noticed some of the ones that have been the premise-based, the starters of the industry, really aren't focused on that. And that's a bit concerning to me. We use, like an Excel spreadsheet to match capabilities and have core processes that we deem highly needed, like web access online. I know for us, and this is probably something everybody's thought about at some point in time, is having a collection agency or collectors telework. Well, the laws are really restrictive right now, and control is a very concerning thing for most agencies, but it's a capability that I want to be able to have on the table at some point in time. If we scale the business or see a large client come in and we don't have the room for it, I don't want to pack up shop and move to another building. It'd be nice to scale that to another office or have some senior staff telework. So those are things that we're putting in our checklist that we're looking across and saying, do these, or does this agency or does this collection software meet this requirement? So.
Now, you said you're in the final decision-making process. How long has that process been from start to now?
Sure. So we have had contacts, just like any vendor out there, I want to say for about a year. We've actively been looking for about 6 months. What I've been told is the conversion process is about 6 months in and of itself. That, depending on the software company, is different. But I would expect about a half a year to really get a good feel for what that conversion process is going to be. So, and obviously it depends on the size of the agency, the capabilities of the staff, so on and so forth.
Got it. And Ed, if you were to decide this afternoon,
I would say the first thing I would do is excuse me, Mike. The first thing I would do is contact other agencies. Who are they using? Who do they like? What software do they like using? What features do they want? Talk to people. I know there was a board on the ACA that were asking about different softwares and who everybody uses. Reach out. We're all there. We're all help one way or another. I think that's the best advice. And do a champion challenge. Same thing the clients do to us, do it to other, software companies. 30-day trial test. Take a small batch of accounts and do it that way.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan and Ed. I mean, I think it starts with a business requirements checklist of we have to be able to do these 50 things and these other 20 things are optional but good to haves, and start checking the boxes, looking at the different vendors. And then exactly to what Ed said, talk to references, and these software vendors will give you references, and you can ask that the software vendor not be present on that call or conversation with some of their clients so you can ask some of the tough questions.
Yeah, I think, to give some of the audience a an actual indicator for how we've measured. One of the things I know I did, I actually went on ACA's directory and just went down all the registered vendors and put a list together and started reaching out and just seeing what they had. You know, for me, making sure that they're part of the ACA was something I wanted. I wanted to make sure that they had standards as a software company and they were, you know, tuned in to what the industry was hearing. So.
Is the company one of the seven?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Ryan was is the company you're working with one of the companies that was on that list?
They are, yes. Yes, they are.
Ed, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, you know, one of the things that I've noticed, and I mentioned this before about, you know, GetApp being one of the review websites, Capterra being another one. There's a lot of software review websites out there that are focused on larger tech companies from Silicon Valley, so on and so forth. I have noticed the ones that are paying attention are out there getting feedback and reviews in those major sectors. So I'm using that as a tool to, you know, I know not every collection software is going to be using these different channels. Some of them are going to be doing the traditional method of relationship building from a who you know standpoint. But if I'm looking at, is this collection software going to integrate with major companies and really be at the forefront, then I want them using the same tools that, you know, we'll use a CRM program Salesforce is doing. So are they following some of the trending patterns that the tech companies are following that I want to integrate with? So that was one of the checklist items for me.
Ed, you mentioned Champion Challenger. Is that something you've done in the past? How has it worked? What would you recommend?
We did. When we were moving from the first platform, after using it for a year or so, we needed something that was a lot better, more features. So we put a couple software systems to the test, and we came up with the one that we really like. And I'll tell you why. There's a large medical billing company out there, and in order to receive placements, their clients want to be able to press a button, basically, and send the account to us. One of the software companies had their IT person on the phone with their IT person within a matter of days, discussing how they can make this API work. That sold me right there. And they didn't even have my business yet. That sold me. If they were that in tune to speak with them that fast to try to get that going, that's somebody I want to be on board with.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, yeah, we discussed this a little bit in some of the previous questions, but you have to look at this vendor as a partner, because your hope is, I mean, especially from a agency our size, we were looking to convert, 50 million accounts and 2,000 clients. Conversion isn't quick, and you want a system that you can relax with for 4 or 5 years at the minimum, without having to go through that conversion constantly.
That's the shelf life, you think, Jonathan, of these days? It's sort of 4 or 5 years before you have to sort of revisit again?
I would hope not. We were on our previous software platform for 14 years, and took us 3 to 4 years to convert fully. We kind of did it in stages and phases. So I'm hoping to get 15 years out of this one.
Well, just for reference, I know for us as an agency, we've been on our software for over 35 years. So for us, this is a large move, and that's something we have to factor in for our end users and employees. I've checked out a few references with a software company that we're really looking into, and ones that are similar size, similar capabilities have just ranted and raved about how easy it was, and they should have done this earlier. So that helps, checking those references and getting out there and seeing what other people are doing as well. So.
Does it work better to use the references that the company provides, or to try and go out and find them on your own instead?
I think a little bit of both. Each company obviously is going to put their best foot forward, just like any one of us are going to do. But being able to, with our community through collections, you can reach out to somebody you met at ACA or somebody who's in an association that's local to find out whether or not their conversion was good. Obviously, you get close enough, and we're all talking to our competitors, so we want to have a competitive edge. But ultimately, there should be somebody close enough that's converted as well. So,
are you finding that more these days that that the software is a competitive differentiator? When you're looking for business against other collection agencies.
I would hope so, and I've had this discussion with both vendors and collection agency owners. Ultimately, what I'm looking for is a core set of programming values or abilities that the software can offer, and then I want to be able to add in some of our customization so we can obviously differentiate ourselves from other agencies. And I think that, when we all go to the table and, healthcare is 33% share or market share for the industry, it's a highly competitive market out there. So we have to have ways to differentiate ourselves. If we're all using the same software, similar software, there has to be something that we're doing. So another one of our checklist items was, can we customize? Can we write our own programs or integrate? And I think that's an important part for the industry and each agency to differentiate themselves. So,
yeah, I agree. Kind of in all three of those points, we found in a lot of our RFP processes that security capabilities, security certifications, and capabilities are part of what has helped win the deal. Obviously, the client comes down to price, but when we're able to say that we're PCI compliant and the other bidders on the RFP or not, it gives us a leg up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ultimately, I think most of our clients are looking for two things. They're looking for, can you recover the money, and are you going to protect my reputation? So the reputation obviously is tied to compliance and security requirements, which is something that we all have to look out for. And hopefully those software companies will catch most of that. Internal policy writing is going to have to be one aspect that each agency handles. But, those are those deciding factors when we're looking at our checklist as well. So.
Well, we've only got a few minutes left. So if anyone has them, there are a few questions here in the queue. But if you have a question now, would probably be the best time to open up the Q&A tab on your Zoom webinar control panel and type it in, and we'll try to get to it before we end in a few minutes. Before we get to the questions, one of the things I wanted to ask, and we've talked a little bit about that with respect to having to hire additional staff or new staff, but are there other areas that maybe agencies overlook when selecting a new software provider? Are there sort of mines in the ground that you can kind of help maybe some agencies avoid when they go through the process of setting up with a new software vendor? Maybe Jonathan, you could take that one first.
Yeah, I think kind of the ones we've discussed cover it. For us, it was the hiring of additional staff. It was the, we probably didn't do enough due diligence on the gap analysis of, hey, we need these 200 things and you got 190, okay, we're good. And then we find that those 10 things ended up being very, very costly to custom develop later. So, I think that's just the important thing is, and it goes back to how you vet these vendors and how long you should spend doing it. It can be very costly to do that. The cost of non-compliance is higher than the cost of compliance.
So does that mean, agencies should be willing to sort of abandon, if they get down the road with somebody, but they come to some kind of roadblock or some speed bump, do they need to be able to sort of make that decision to walk away sometimes?
Yeah, I think that's a tough decision to make, depending on, you just can't think of it as it's a sunk cost. And you have to make the decision to get on to whatever system is going to be best for your company. And